Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to go through the 7 books that I absolutely loved this year. I really didn't have too many favorites, I have to say. I'm quite picky giving out my 5 stars, and to be fair, some of these are probably like a 4.75, but let's not tell them. Okay, so the first one is this one. This is the last one that I read out of this stack, and this is The Dagger and The Flame by Catherine Doyle. Now, I think had I read a lot more books this year that I found to be 5 stars. This technically probably is more a 4.5, but because I struggled so much to find books that I enjoyed this year, I gave this a 5 because I just really enjoyed it. It gave me all the feelings. It's like a slow burn enemies to lovers romance. And then I also really kind of like the world building. I like the magic system. I kind of like the story. Was it super original? No, absolutely not. But I really, really enjoyed it. And I did get this in Fairy Loot. So it's not something that I would have necessarily picked up myself, but I really, really loved it. And yeah, probably the weakest of the batch, but still I would recommend if you like, I don't know, these type of books. Okay, next up, I did read the second of the Emily Wilds. This is Map of the Otherlands. I didn't like this as much as the first book. The first book I gave 5 star. I did give this technically 5 stars as well, but I think in reality, it's like a low 5 star. Definitely a little bit down on the last one because I do think a lot of this book is more of a filler. And then obviously the third book will be like when we're in the Faeland, and I think it'll be a lot more interesting. So this is more about getting there, figuring out more, you know, learning more about the world and whatnot. And I really enjoyed it. I really did. And I always love the little characters in here. I think Wendell is great. I know a lot of people don't like him, but I think he is just so charming and I love him. So I actually really, really enjoyed it. I think it's such a cute, cozy, romantic-y fantasy book. Whether it hovers around romance or not, you know, you could debate that. It's really not, but there obviously is a romance in here, and I like it. It's very lovely. Okay, and then this one, I didn't technically give it a 5 star, but I really, really enjoyed it. This is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, the first book that I have read by him, and I definitely want to read more. This one also came out like almost 10 years ago, so this is an older one. I'm hoping the rest that he's been releasing over the years live up to this or as good or give me the same sort of vibes. I thought this was so campy, so fun, and it kind of surprised me because it really centered around friendship, like teenage girls' friendship. And also it had like Heather's vibes at some point. There were some horror elements, obviously, but it was never like spooky or scary. It was more a little bit on the comical side, but done really, really well. I felt like I was watching a movie reading this. I really, really enjoyed it. And it was just a lovely little surprise. And actually it made me cry at the end. It was so moving at the end. I was almost caught off guard, but it worked for me. So I don't know, the more I thought about this book, the more I felt like it deserved to be a 5 star, even though I kind of gave it a 4.5. I think ultimately it is a 5 star. All right, next up we've got The Scarlet Alchemist. This is Kylie Lee Baker. I did buy The Orchid. What's the other one? The Orchid. I bought the second book. I can't remember what it's called because I really, really love this. This is also from Fairy Loot. This was an absolute surprise to me. I don't see a lot of people talking about this book, and I find it so good. It was just so entertaining to me. I think it was YA. Was it YA? Potentially. I can't recall. But this dealt with necromancy, bringing back the dead. There was like demons in here, monsters. There was a little bit of a trial. Like it had all the key words and key elements that people like love to read about. And I didn't see anybody talking about this book literally the whole year. And I don't know why. I read it early in the year and it's been my favorite book of the year. It was just so much fun. So I'm really hoping the next book doesn't disappoint me because it did end kind of in a weird way where you have to read the next book to see what happens. And I want to know what happens. There's also a little bit of cute little romance in here too, so need to find out what happens in the second book. I just haven't seen anyone talk about this book, and I honestly just feel like people ignored it and thought, well, it's another like Chinese, you know, historical fiction book. I'm not going to read that. But no, this is actually really, really good. So I would recommend The Scarlet Alchemist. I think it's so good. Don't want to give away too much about what happens, but there is like horror elements in here. I think I really liked that idea that it wasn't just like fantasy, but it literally was pretty gruesome. And really kind of wild in some scenes, and it starts off that way too. So it kind of just sets the scene for the rest of the book, and I really just was very much surprised by it. Okay, and then I read Bunny because I'd seen so many people talk about Bunny, but you hate it or you love it. I was thankfully one of the people that absolutely loved this book. I went into it really not knowing what it was about. Aside from maybe there was like a little bit of a cult, but it's just so far more than that. There is so many different genres rolled into this book. Yes, it's a horror book, but there's like comedy, there's a little bit of a romance too, and it kind of like, you're like, what? It is so bizarre. It's fantastical. It's sad and moving too. Like there's a lot of psychological things going on in this book, and it was great. Now, it's very repetitive in some of the language, but it's done purposely. Like, okay, Bunny. Oh, Bunny, I love you. Oh, Bunny, you're so wonderful. Because these girls, you know, talk to each other. They're the bunnies. And it definitely, this is another one, but massively more so, it gives me the Heather vibes. Like, the Heathers movie with Winona Ryder, and then you have the three Heathers, and they're all just like basically clones of each other. And they're just, in their little cult. And she's kind of the outsider. So this is very much it. It's set in university, and it is just really interesting, entertaining. I had no idea that what happens in it in terms of like the cult-esque vibes. I had no idea any of that happens. I'm not going to give it away because it was so like, what? Because I was so happy going into this book not knowing what on earth was actually going to happen. And when it started happening, I was thinking, is this actually happening? And it did. But then also at the same time, you're thinking at the end, did any of it happen? So it's like kind of a really fun book. So I would recommend. I can understand why some people would hate this book, but I am not one of them. And I really loved it. I think I like weird books. It's just one of those things. But I also love this book. This is House in the Cerulean Sea. I was really late to reading this because I think it was released, I don't know, like 4 years ago, whatever. I do have the second book. I haven't read the second book yet, but I did pick it up this year and I can't wait. So this one took me some time to get into, I have to say. I wasn't quite sure what this book was trying to do at first, but the more I got into it, and honestly, you get to like the side, like the actual little characters in this orphanage, it is so delightful. Now, I know a little bit about the backstory, and I think there's some discourse. Some people are upset of the content that was used for this book because it is based on, I think, a real life orphanage that happened in Canada. I think something like that. So I can appreciate that it is, but I think it was written in such a sweet way that I don't see how you could honestly be mad about this book. Maybe like hate me all you want, but I honestly felt like this was, I think authors can take inspiration from a lot of different places. And I think you just have to give a little leniency potentially, because I really don't think that this was written with any negative connotations whatsoever towards any of that. So, and also there was a little romance in here, and I was totally surprised by that. So this also is another book where I didn't know where it was going. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And then it just was so fun, so sweet, so cozy. And then there was the romance on top of it. And I thought, oh, this is like the sweetest little book. And this also made me cry at the end. Okay, and then lastly, I do have Starling House. I know some people didn't enjoy this book. I really enjoyed it. This is Alex E. Harrow. And I have read 2 books from her. This is definitely my favorite. This caught me by surprise too. Went into it really not expecting that much, but I really liked the character in here. I liked the way it was written. The way I could relate to her a little bit too. I thought it was really interesting. And then there is a little bit of a slow burn romance in here, but then it does center more towards the spookiness, what's going on. And it's quite vague. Like when you read this book, you really don't kind of understand what's going on, but it's purposely vague. And I actually kind of liked that. It was a book that captured me. I think I read it in spring, and I was just in a really bad reading slump or situation where I was just reading like 2-star, 3-star books. And then this came along and I really enjoyed it. If I reread it again, would I find it as compelling? Would I give it a 5-star? I'm not entirely sure, to be fair, but it's keeping the 5-star because honestly, it gave me those vibes when I read it. I really enjoyed it. I didn't want to put it down. And it is a pretty small book, but I read it quite slowly because I was enjoying it so much. So sometimes the best books are the ones you want to savor the most. And this is one I got from Illumicrate. This is like one of the only Illumicrate books so far that I've ever given 5 stars that I really, really enjoyed. Because I actually had paused my subscription with the Limit Crate because I just felt like all the books I was getting weren't books that I really want to read. But I do see that they have like a horror subscription, so I might sign up for the horror one instead. I signed up for the fantasy one, and I just don't think that it's for me. I have like 12 books that I'm trying to read with the Limit Crate to figure out if I like any of them. And so far, I think I only like one of them, but it's 12 books. Like, I'm not reading very much this month because I'm kind of stuck on these books that I'm trying to get out of my collection. These ones up here are all Fairy Loot, and I haven't read those. And I think Fairy Loot I've had a little bit better in terms of like my ratio has been a little bit higher on what I've liked and what I haven't. There's always going to be hits and misses, but Limit Crate's definitely been more of a miss this year for me. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with that subscription before I lose my spot and cancel it completely. Anyway, that is it. Those are all of my books. There's only 7 of them that I really, really enjoyed this year. They were by far my favorite books, and they're books that I continuously think about as well when I'm reading other books, which is not necessarily helpful because I don't want to keep comparing every book to books that I really, really enjoyed. But I like that there was a few like horror elements in some of these. And honestly, I feel like maybe I like horror and I like obscure, weird, unhinged situations and characters, because Bunny is definitely like that. I think also My Best Friend's Exorcism has quite a bit of unhingedness to it. And then even looking at The Scarlet Alchemist, it's not unhinged, but there is horror elements to that like fantasy world that we're reading. So I don't know, there was just something I'm trying to figure out myself in terms of what I actually like, because obviously the majority of the books that I have been reading this year and last year are not my favorite, and I'm still trying to figure out what on earth I like reading. But I do have quite a few unhinged books on my TBR that I could potentially try to read for 2025. And there's quite a lot of books on my anticipated list as well, which that will probably be my next video, just my 2025 most anticipated books. I also have a whole list of my 5-star predictions that I potentially could also let you guys know if that is of interest. But yeah, if any of these books pique your interest, I would highly, highly recommend all of them. I definitely think Dagger and The Flame is on the weaker side out of the rest of them that I've just spoken about, but I still really enjoyed it and I gave it a 5 stars. So I wanted to group it in with the rest. But thank you so much. I hope everyone's doing well. Happy Christmas, and I will see you all next time. Bye.